My name is Anna Ramesh. I'm here to introduce you to someone I like very much. She doesn't know everything, but together we find out lots of stuff we didn't know before. Here's Gail Ramesh, my mommy, and my friend.
Thanks, Angel. You can stay, Mary Lou. Moral support. Hello. I'm from right here in London, Ontario, and I'm very honored to be able to have the opportunity to speak to you all today. And like Anna said, I don't know everything, but together she and I find out a whole lot of stuff that I never knew before. Like I didn't know I could homeschool. When Anna was born, I knew I wanted to stay home with her, but I didn't know how to do that. So I started a home daycare, got in other kids. It evolved into homeschooling. I met people who happened to be doing it when I started looking around for alternatives to her education. I went around to every school that I could find, and I asked them for what I thought was relatively simple questions. What is your philosophy of education? What is your methodology of education? How can you guarantee me that my child can learn at her optimum level? And I wanted to know who designed their curriculum and why. The public school people looked at me like I was from outer space. Why do you want to know? None of the other parents want to know. I don't have that to show you. I don't get it until 2 weeks after the kids are here already. I was astounded. The private schools were probably the only ones that could give me a succinct curriculum of what they were doing, what their plans were. Some of them even had a methodology and a philosophy of education, a goals or a mission statement set out. But they still could not provide me with the information and the guarantee that my daughter would be able to learn at her optimum level. Every single school agreed that she would have to be one of the cogs, one of the sheep, doing exactly what everybody else was doing, whether it was appropriate for her or not. Now, some of them said, oh, well, yeah, we have, if a parent realizes that their child can work at a couple of grades level higher, then perhaps we can get a meeting together and it'll take 2 or 3 weeks, this is the private schools, or even a month to maybe permit her to go into a higher level class so that she can do what she is ready to do. Now, I guess I need to explain that she is, like every other child, there are as many ways to learn as there are people. So some kids learn faster than others. Some kids are ready to do some things that other kids are not. If you are a parent, you know that when your child first pulls themselves up on something and stands and goes to make their first independent steps, their first opportunity to walk on their own, and you're standing there with your arms like this, going, come on, it's okay, you can do it. That child may be 8 months old, that child may be 15 months old. Doesn't mean that the 15-month-old is learning disabled or physically disabled and that they couldn't do it at 8 months. There's nothing wrong with the fact that the child waited until they were ready at 15 months to do what they were ready to do. Anna was able to read really early. By 2, she knew all the alphabet letters. By 3, she knew all the sounds of the letters. By 4, she was reading at a grade 1 level. She's 8 now. She reads better than I do. It's pretty scary. We fight for the morning newspaper. Anyway, the point was that her language skills level in a school-oriented understanding is anywhere from a grade 6 to a grade 11 level. Her reading is at a grade 11 level. Her comprehension is, at a grade 11 level. Her grammar and writing, and that's kind of at the 6th end of the scale. How can one grade level system provide the flexibility for a child to do what they are ready to do. I am not opposed to schools. I'm opposed to the government-run, tax-funded schools. Whenever teachers go on strike here in Canada, I love it. My phone rings off the wall. I can't get enough time to talk to everybody, so I have sessions that I run at the library. As soon as I hear any kerfuffle about a teacher's strike, I start promoting my talks. And they're attended in masses of people. The overwhelming majority of people have one of the same questions. How do I know what I'm going to do is right? The overwhelming commonality to all the parents is a school-induced, societally induced lack of self-confidence. Or what I would more appropriately, I believe, term as an inappropriate self-confidence, an inappropriate self-esteem. Because of that grade level system that we've become accustomed to in pretty much every country that is here. I don't know any countries that don't have a grade level, but because of that, if you reach grade 10, and let's say you've never ever done space sciences before, and the first book on space sciences is a grade 2 book, how many grade 10s are going to say, oh yeah, cool, let me see it? Oh no, it's grade 2. I'm grade 10. I don't need that. Give me the grade 10 book on space sciences. Doesn't matter that I've never done it before. They have an inappropriate self-confidence, an inappropriate self-esteem that is not based in reality. They have not learned to trust their own knowledge and their own judgment. When I first decided to keep her at home, I faced a lot of questions from people. What about socialization? Is it legal? Don't you have to be a teacher to do that? I had no clue. I just knew that it was the right thing for me to do. Fortunately, my background was that I was raised in England. I was born in England, raised in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro and Montreal, and sent to boarding school on the Isle of Wight in England. So I had the opportunity to experience almost every type of educational system known to man. My grandfather was a scientist, and he homeschooled me at home in between the grades and in between the countries, for which I am eternally grateful. I was able to go to a year-round schooling system in Brazil, which started at 7 a.m. and went to 11 a.m. every day, Monday through Saturday. You had all the afternoons and Sunday off. But it was cool because the heat, the climate, it worked out well. But I still went running home to Grandpa, and he would show me the most interesting things in his laboratory. Having that opportunity to see all the different styles of education and knowing that instinctively my parents were automatically responsible for my education. There wasn't a government that, told my parents where to send me to school. It didn't follow us around from country to country saying, you have to put her in there, So living in Canada as an adult with a child, I was very surprised by people automatically assuming that they had to put their children in the public school system. I was approached by people on the street who would say, oh, what a great little girl, how old is she, what grade is she in? And I would tell them that she was homeschooled, and they would look at me with blank faces going, what's that? Or, how do you do that? And I started to get tired of defending my decision and my choice because I knew that it was what was best for her and that she was thriving in it. Next time I started to meet people on the street with other kids, I said, hi, how old is your child? What school do they go to? What grade are they in? Oh, the public school system, grade 2. Cool. Why did you choose the public system? Again, I got blank stares. What do you mean? It's down the street. Aren't I supposed to? It was indeed an education in itself. And one of the biggest things I do now is not homeschooling children, because I'm not a teacher. I know George Bernard Shaw was not like the best libertarian in the universe, but at all. But he did have a great quote, and he said, "I am not a teacher. I am just a fellow traveler of whom you have asked the way. I pointed ahead of myself as well as of you." That's my motto. That's my philosophy. I'm on this journey with the people I'm involved with, not just my daughter, because the families that call me, between 5 and 20 people, a week, want to know how they too can help their kids. So I'm helping them recognize their own freedom and their own responsibilities and their own innate right and responsibilities to educate their children. The question, how do I know if I'm doing the right thing? How do I know if she's at the right level? I go into the level thing and talk to them about the inappropriateness of the grade level system. And they inevitably are very shocked and surprised. And it still takes a long time for them to build up their own self-esteem and their own self-confidence in order to take their kids out of school or find an appropriate way to look at what they are doing. Homeschooling is not just chaining your children to the kitchen table. You don't have to do that. Home-based education doesn't mean that you do everything yourself. Being responsible for your children's education means that it is turned around on society, on our government's system. The school system is there and should be there or any schools that exist are there to provide a service. If you don't look at it that way, then you're falling into a trap that the Honorable Robert Spence, in a book called The School Promoters here in Canada. In 1847, he said he was certain that the granting of free schools would undermine parental responsibility in educational matters. Once the parent ceased to pay for the schooling of his children, the crucial link between himself and the teachers was severed, and the gradual decline in family interest in the schools would take place. That was in 1847. Nobody listened. I'm happy now if I can get somebody to stop and listen. I'm happiest when I'm talking to somebody who differs wildly from what I believe in, because I'm hoping that I can maybe help them to see that there's something else out there. When a parent chooses to take responsibility for their education, and I know this topic said, taking control of your children's education. It's more like reclaiming your natural right. Because when the common school systems began, here in Canada, it was 130 years ago. It was a test. It failed. Actually, it succeeded because it did exactly what it meant to do, to socialize and nationalize the children. I try to put myself back in the mind of, okay, it was 130 years ago. Canada's relatively a new country. We have a lot of immigrants, a lot of people who don't speak the same languages, and they were trying to organize this country. They wanted everybody to come together and be one nation. Well, they needed to find a way to do that, and what Edgerton Ryerson found was the common school system after being involved with Horace Mann in the States. The 4 fundamentals of the public school system are still in our system today, and they're not in the home schools. They are occasionally in private schools, but different children need different things. So as long as you find something that is appropriate for your child, you're being responsible for your children's education. If you take your child and say, no, I don't feel comfortable teaching them myself or being a mentor for them myself, but I want to find where they would thrive best. you would go to a school and interview a teacher. Find out what the subject matter is in the class. Ask your child, heaven forbid they should have a choice, what they want to do, if they're interested in it. As long as you are treating it as they are providing you a service, and it's not the other way around. For the school system, especially for the government-run, tax-funded school system, it's a bums in seats issue. It costs anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 per year per child in Canada. And if you go to any of the local private schools here in London, it's maybe $5,000 to $6,000 a year. Dollar for dollar, it is cheaper to send your child to a private school. It's even cheaper if you homeschool, especially if you have lots of kids and you can use one curriculum over and over and over and over again as each child reaches a certain age. It is not expensive to homeschool. And it's not expensive to join a network of people where all the parents share their different specialties and expertise on different matters. There's huge networks everywhere. If you go on the internet and type in homeschooling, boom, you'll be overwhelmed. I've sometimes told, parents have said, well, give me some books that I can read. Tell me what I can do to research this. And I said, well, tell you what, you could spend the rest of your life researching it and never doing it. There's enough material out there that if you sat down right now and started reading homeschooling books, you would never finish them all. And you'd also never have the opportunity to do it. So what I tell people is do it. And then kind of grab things along the way. One of the best things that I found is this. Here I am reaching mindlessly for this book. And I have it up at my table in the exhibit area. It's the Teenage Liberation Handbook written by Grace Llewellyn. It's phenomenal. It's the book that gave me the confidence to end up here talking to you and keep my daughter away from the inappropriate influences of the school system. Because I believe wholeheartedly that children in the government-run, tax-funded school systems are over-socialized to their own peer groups and under-socialized to the rest of the world. Or rather inappropriately socialized to their own peer group and inappropriately socialized to the rest of the world. The rest of the world, this came upon me the other day, was when Anna was going up to Tim Hortons, a coffee place, and was ordering what she wanted. And she went in line, she stood in line, she had her $5, waving it. She stood there. The girl went directly to the band behind her. It happens over and over again. Adults are not comfortable with children who are self-confident, with children who know how to socialize with anybody of any age. My neighbor, when I first moved into the house that I'm in now, came up to me, he said, I had a conversation with your daughter. I said, yeah, I know. He said, no, you don't understand. I had a conversation with your daughter. I said, yeah, I know. For her entire life, I have treated her like a human being, not like an adult, not like a child, but a human being. She's comfortable talking to people. She's comfortable being with people. She's not afraid to tell you what she really thinks. Well, beware. Isn't that what a libertarian is? Somebody who's not afraid to stand up for what they believe in? I have with me today, because I know I'm kind of running short, because I'm better at answering questions than I am at just speaking. So I want your questions. I have the wonderful education responsibility quiz that I'll pass around if people want it, or it's at my table up at the exhibition area. And I also have with me, because I got involved with the Separation of School and State Alliance. How many people know about that? Yay! Down in Washington, D.C., when I attended their conference, SEPCON, 2 years in a row, met some fantastic people. Apparently, the long-awaited John Taylor Gatto book is now out. I'm really excited about this. Somebody loaned me this, and I'm afraid they might not get it back. So I also have with me the proclamation for the separation of school and state. If you'd like to sign it, that would be fantastic. And you can read it on your own because I'm running out of time. I'm okay? Oh, yay. Great. Okay. So if you want me to read it, I'll read it. Okay. Oh, yeah, you got to sign it afterwards, yeah. The proclamation for the separation of school and state. Whereas parents have both the responsibility and the right to provide for the education of their children. And whereas a state-financed school system, even one that is well-funded and staffed with talented, caring teachers, cannot address the different expectations parents hold for their children. And whereas assumption by government of parents' financial responsibility and consequent undermining of their authority leads to weaker families and social decline. And whereas the politically strongest factions inevitably use the schools to shape attitudes and control the content of children's minds. Thus, it is clear that reform of state schooling will not solve the education crisis. Therefore, we must end government compulsion in education funding, attendance, and content. Separation of school and state is essential to restore parental responsibility and create an environment of educational freedom in which students and teachers can flourish. I think it says exactly what I know I believe in. So I came up here to Canada, looked around, saw nobody else doing it, and said, okay, I started the Canadian Alliance for the Separation of School and State. A couple of other things. In the book that I mentioned earlier, The School Promoters, one of the things that compelled me personally to continue to fight to reclaim and control and not abrogate my responsibility of my daughter's education were the statements that were made in letters that she refers to in this book, such as the state felt that it was doing the world of good because it had to remove the children from the inappropriate influences of the family. There's one to get my hairs on the back of my neck standing up on end. Inappropriate. Thank you. Another one was quite blatant. It was the cheapest form of moral police. The letters that were sent back and forth between, the Horace Mann bunch down in the States and the Edgerton Ryerson people up here, it's scary. They knew exactly what they were doing, and it wasn't intended to educate. It had nothing to do with helping our children learn more. Nothing at all. And yet people still believe that our system that's based on those four fundamentals, the two governmental and the two in the school system, are designed to help our children learn. It's not designed to help our children learn real self-confidence. It's not designed to help our children learn true independence and independent thought and trusting their own judgment. Because kids don't get the opportunity to trust their own judgment in the system. They don't get the opportunity to think for themselves, even though they're made to believe that they are. They're told, oh yeah, you can choose between this and that, as long as it's this and that. Like the compulsory volunteerism that we now have here in Ontario, in the high schools. They have to choose 40 hours, I believe, over the course of their high school experience in order to get their high school diploma. And it has to be one of the acceptable places, one of the approved places to volunteer. So if a student goes home every day and helps grandma who's disabled, or goes out and picks up garbage on her way home from school just to try and beautify the neighborhood, doesn't count. None of it counts, unless it's something that's approved by the school, which is approved by the state, which the lobbyists put forth to push the schools into supporting. And right now, in the system, those small groups of people I mean, I would consider us a small group of people, but we're getting bigger every day. But each independent group trying to impose what they believe on the system as, this is important information. Children need to know this. We need to put this into the curriculum. And so little by little, the curriculum keeps jumping up and up and up, and there's so much stuff that the teachers are trying to teach. They're doing backflips. They can't keep up with everything that they're supposed to teach. There is no way that a child can come out of grade 12 here in Canada and know everything. One of the things that astounded me, a friend of mine was opposed to my homeschooling, and she said, you know, for the social aspect, how dare you, how dare you think that you can do that, all of that? And she said that I was denying my daughter the opportunity to learn from the adversity of the public school system. I had to wrap my brain around that one for a long time. Just about. Oh, well, they said in the letters, you know, that the schools were cheaper to build than the prisons. So, yeah, absolutely. So thinking about that made me even more, you know, determined to do what I felt was best. Going back to those four things, the two governmental things that they did based on the Prussian school system, if you're not familiar with that background, is first they made it tax funded, so whether or not you liked it, you had to support it through your taxes. Secondly, they made it compulsory attendance, and in Massachusetts, when they instituted it, they actually hired militia to come to your door with bayonets and remove your children forcefully. People fought and died because their children were being abducted by the state. Much like we had here in Canada with the Native Canadians into the residential schools. It was happening everywhere. It was compulsory. Whether you liked it or not, you had to go. The two things they did in the schools were, one, they took a concept and dissected it into subjects: English, math, history, geography, science. They specifically did that based on the work of, if I can find his name, Hermann Ebbinghaus. How many people are familiar with Hermann Ebbinghaus? Oh, well, one person anyway. Two, maybe. His idea was that if you want to study learning without contaminating your data with the past experience, comprehension, and interest, because you couldn't have interest in what you were doing, because otherwise you'd be spoiling the scientific results. Nobody, by definition, can make sense of or has any interest in nonsense. It's pure, unsullied learning. To construct his law of learning, he created lists of meaningless syllables and then studied his own efforts to learn them over a 2-year period. From his studies, he obtained predictable results, which can be applied anywhere in the world. If you give people a meaningless task, they will perform it in exactly the same way. This ultimately produced the learning curve, which is all based on nonsense. The contemporary view is that a child doesn't learn something the first time, teach it to them the second time and a third time. If people are working hard enough and motivated properly with rewards, you can move them up the curve. It is believed that repetition will result in learning, and learning can be ensured by pushing people up the curve. The method allows organizers of education to put things into units that could be measured. So then we have the subjects. The importance of separating and dissecting ideas and concepts into subjects and teaching it just in little blocks was scientifically proven to ensure that the children or the people that being taught could not make the connections back again by themselves. They could not figure out, okay, I have a page of math questions in front of me, it means what? And for generations now, at least 4, people have been saying, why am I doing this? There's no clue. why they're doing it, why they have to learn a certain thing at a certain time. It doesn't have any connection to reality. And that's why kids lose their natural love of learning. They lose that natural curiosity that they had when they were, before they went to school.